There's nothing really to say other than that. She's winning Rookie of the Year. She's a top candidate for League MVP.
All of a sudden, Caitlin Clark is starting to push A'ja Wilson for MVP of this league.
The WNBA and everyone associated with it can't seem to stop disrespecting Caitlin Clark. It's getting ridiculous. They tried it with the top 25 list, and they did it with the Rookie of the Year race for months. Now that it's impossible to deny her talent, they're disrespecting her in the MVP race, a conversation Caitlin Clark has fully earned her way into. And by the way, I'm not the only one saying this. Indiana Fever rookie sensation Caitlin Clark isn't just winning Rookie of the Year. She's a top candidate for League MVP. Honestly, Caitlin Clark is now starting to push A'ja Wilson for the MVP of the league. But this latest disrespect is even worse than what Clark has faced in the past. When ESPN made their lists, repeatedly disrespecting Clark by ranking her as low as 6th among rookies, and even in their most recent update, not having her ranked number 1, we understood it. ESPN is a sports network that needs ratings. They'll do whatever brings them attention. It's all about the money. But it's a different story when the WNBA officially releases an MVP list, and the same thing happens. Caitlin Clark is undeniably a top 5 WNBA player right now, with arguably the strongest MVP case of any player besides A'ja Wilson. Yet, she doesn't even make the list. At the bottom of the screen, she's listed as an honorable mention. I'm telling you right now, if the WNBA can get away with this, what will happen next is one of the biggest robberies. Caitlin Clark will get snubbed from first team All-WNBA. That would be a criminal disservice to the historic season Caitlin Clark has had. Let's go through the list of MVP candidates, dismissing each player one by one, starting with number 5, Alyssa Thomas. Now, right off the bat, she should be disqualified from consideration simply for the fact that she failed to back up her trash talk last season. Yes, Alyssa Thomas broke the WNBA record for most assists in a single season, which is a great accomplishment. But during March Madness, while Caitlin was putting together one of the greatest postseason runs in NCAA history, Alyssa's teammate tweeted that Caitlin might lead the WNBA in assists next year. Alyssa responded saying, "Don't play with me." Funnily enough, Sheryl Swoopes also found this interaction hilarious and responded with laughing emojis. Fast forward to the season, and Alyssa Thomas again broke the WNBA single-season assist record, averaging more assists this year than last. But here's the problem. The player she mocked, Caitlin Clark, also broke the WNBA single-season assist record and averaged more assists per game than Alyssa has ever in her career. Not only does Caitlin average more assists, but she also scores more points. Thomas is averaging 10.1 points, while Caitlin Clark is pushing nearly 20 points per game. They call Alyssa the triple-double machine, saying she's a Swiss Army knife who can do everything on the floor. But looking at the numbers, she's only a few bad games away from averaging a triple-single this season. This is similar to the Angel Reese double-double thing, because Alyssa is considered the triple-double queen. This season, she recorded one more triple-double than Caitlin Clark. But we need to realize there's a difference between a triple-double that looks like this and a triple-double that looks like that. In the NBA, when Russell Westbrook won MVP for averaging a triple-double, he also led the league in scoring, averaging over 30 points per game. Alyssa Thomas is not even averaging a triple-double and ranks 37th in the WNBA in points per game. Among all starters on the Connecticut Sun, Alyssa averages the fewest points, 5th in scoring on her team. Meanwhile, there are barely 5 players in the entire WNBA who average more points than Caitlin Clark. On the Sun, 6 players score in double digits. So, of course, she averages a lot of assists when everyone on the court can score. Yet, she still averages fewer assists than rookie Caitlin Clark. Imagine how many assists Clark would average if every player on the Fever averaged 10 or more points per game. Yes, the Sun has a better record than the Fever. But are you seriously saying that Alyssa is more valuable to her team than Caitlin is to the Fever? If not, then Alyssa shouldn't be ahead of Caitlin in the MVP voting. Next, let's move to number 4 on the list, Breanna Stewart. If we were talking about the best players in the world, she'd be higher, maybe even second, depending on how much weight you place on past performance and reputation. But right now, this season, Breanna Stewart, who was MVP last year, shouldn't even be in the conversation, She's averaging fewer points, fewer rebounds, fewer assists, and shooting worse percentages from the field, the free throw line, and from three. She's even shooting a career-worst 29% from three-point range. Statistically, when comparing her to Clark, it might look like Stewart edges her out if you're just box score watching, as she marginally wins in points per game. But playing different positions means they have different responsibilities. Both average 8.5 rebounds per game, and assists are harder for guards, making Caitlin's more impressive. Clark also averages more rebounds than Stewart averages assists. In terms of efficiency, Clark shoots a higher percentage from three, from the foul line, and even from two-pointers, despite being a guard. To be clear, Stewart is having a solid season, but not by her standards. The main reason she's ranked so high is because she plays for the New York Liberty, who have the best record in the WNBA. The fact that she was MVP last year, her team is the best this year, and she still won't win MVP shows she's not as good individually as she was last year. And there's another player on her team ranked higher on this MVP list, which disqualifies her from consideration, in my opinion. How can you be a serious MVP candidate when you're not even the MVP of your own team? Around A'ja Wilson's MVP candidacy in comparison to Caitlin Clark. A'ja Wilson, undoubtedly one of the most dominant players in WNBA history, is having an all-time great season, and there's no denying her individual brilliance. She leads the league in multiple statistical categories and has played an essential role in keeping the Las Vegas Aces as contenders. However, when looking at MVP criteria, it's important to weigh both individual statistics and team success. The Aces, despite having 4 Olympians on their roster and being reigning back-to-back champions, are currently the 4th seed. This might raise the question of whether Wilson's individual success has truly elevated her team the way an MVP should. Historically, the MVP award has often gone to the best player on the best team, and that criteria seems to shift depending on the season. If breaking records alone were the only standard for winning MVP, we could hand it to Wilson now. But the idea of value means looking at the broader picture, which includes what Caitlin Clark and Napheesa Collier are doing for their respective teams. Let's not overlook the fact that Caitlin Clark has had to carry a much heavier load than many of her counterparts. She doesn't have multiple MVP caliber players around her like Wilson or Sabrina Ionescu, yet she's still managed to perform at an elite level in nearly every facet of the game. Her assists are outpacing even the most seasoned veterans, and her scoring and efficiency numbers have been remarkable for a rookie. It's no small feat to come into a league as stacked as the WNBA and immediately start breaking records. The Rookie of the Year race was never really in question, but the MVP conversation deserves more nuance than it's being given. Clark has transformed the Indiana Fever from a non-factor into a team that could contend in the future. While the Fever's overall record isn't as impressive as the top teams, the impact Clark has had on the franchise is undeniable, and MVP voters should be considering that as well. It's not just about numbers, it's about the context in which those numbers are produced. Furthermore, the case for Napheesa Collier is equally compelling. Leading the Minnesota Lynx to the best record in their conference, while putting up MVP caliber numbers, shows she's right in the thick of this conversation. The fact that both Collier and Clark are being sidelined in favor of giving Wilson a likely unanimous MVP win is troubling. Collier's defensive impact, in particular, deserves more praise, and the narrative around MVP should include all facets of the game, not just scoring and record-breaking performances. What we're seeing with the MVP conversation is a reluctance to disrupt the status quo. A'ja Wilson's brilliance is known, but that doesn't mean we should overlook what players like Clark and Collier are doing. And the disrespect toward Caitlin Clark is becoming increasingly obvious, whether in Rookie of the Year discussions, all WNBA teams, or MVP voting. The argument for Clark being an MVP candidate is strong, and it's baffling why she isn't getting the recognition she deserves from the league and the media. It's time for fans, analysts, and voters to broaden their perspectives. If they don't, Caitlin Clark is on track to be one of the most unfairly disrespected stars the WNBA has ever seen. The debate isn't whether A'ja Wilson is great, she is, but whether she truly stands alone this season, as the most valuable player in the league. If you factor in individual brilliance, team context, and impact, Caitlin Clark deserves to be right up there with her. This is the conversation we need to have, and I'll be diving into it further in my upcoming video. So stay tuned, and don't forget to check out the Fever versus Aces game breakdown, which will be crucial in this MVP debate. Make sure you're subscribed with notifications turned on, because the conversation around Caitlin Clark's place in the WNBA is only getting started. That's all for now.